The cartographer's calling. Alara Voss had always been drawn to the edges of known maps, where the world stretched beyond the boundaries of conventional understanding. Born in a quiet village nestled between rolling hills and misty forests, she was raised among the meticulous records of her father, a renowned cartographer whose hands had once traced the contours of entire provinces with precision. From an early age, Alara would spend hours poring over ancient scrolls, sketching landscapes that seemed to shift with the wind, and imagining what lay beyond the lines drawn by ink and parchment. Her passion for mapping was not merely academic. It was a calling, a yearning to uncover truths hidden in the world's forgotten corners. Her father had instilled in her an unwavering belief in the power of maps, not just as tools for navigation, but as windows into the mysteries of the universe. He often told her that every map carried its own story, and that those who sought them were destined to find something extraordinary. It was this philosophy that led Alara to pursue a career in cartography, not for financial stability or prestige, but for the thrill of discovery. She had always felt that the world was a puzzle waiting to be solved, and she was determined to piece it together. Yet, despite her talents and dedication, Alara's life remained tethered to the familiar. Her village, nestled in a valley surrounded by jagged mountains, had long been a place of quiet contentment. The sky above was often painted with hues of lavender and indigo, casting an eternal twilight that softened the world into a gentle glow. Here, maps were used for practical purposes, guiding travelers through the dense forests and navigating the winding paths of the village. But Alara's heart burned with curiosity, and she knew that there was more to the world than what lay within the borders of her home. It was during one such night, as the stars shimmered above her in a constellation unlike any she had seen before, that she stumbled upon an ancient map hidden beneath layers of dust and neglect. The parchment, worn with age, bore strange symbols and markings that defied the conventions of cartography. At first, she thought it was merely an artifact from a forgotten era, but as she traced its lines with her fingertips, something within her stirred. A sense of purpose, a whisper in the void of knowledge waiting to be claimed. This map, she realized, was unlike any other she had ever seen. It hinted at a place beyond the known world, one that seemed to pulse with an energy she could not yet comprehend. The map that wasn't there. Alara's hands trembled as she unfurled the ancient parchment, its surface aged and brittle beneath her touch. The ink was faded, the edges worn, but the symbols remained clear, each one a puzzle waiting to be solved. She had found it in a forgotten archive within her father's study, hidden behind layers of dust and neglect, as if it had been deliberately concealed. At first, she thought it was an artifact from an old school of cartography, perhaps a relic of the past that had fallen out of use. But as she traced its lines with her fingers, something about it felt different. A sense of purpose, as though it had been waiting for someone to find it. The map was not simply a collection of geographical coordinates. It was an intricate depiction of a place that defied conventional understanding. Its contours were not drawn in the traditional manner. There were no roads, rivers, or mountains marked in the usual way. Instead, the map seemed to pulse with energy, its lines shifting subtly as if the land itself were alive. The symbols were unfamiliar, yet they carried an uncanny familiarity, as though they had been etched into her mind by some unseen force. She could not explain it, but there was something in the map that called to her, a resonance that made her heart race. Alara's fingers moved across its surface, trying to decipher the meaning of each line and symbol. Some markings were familiar, geographical features she had studied in her father's notes, but others were entirely new. There were spirals, geometric patterns, and strange glyphs that seemed to represent something beyond mere geography. She leaned closer, her breath shallow as she noticed the faintest traces of color beneath the ink, as if the map itself was alive with a hidden vibrancy. It was not just an image, it was a message, written in the language of the unknown. A chill ran down her spine as she realized what she had found. This map was more than just a tool for navigation. It was a key to something far greater. The symbols spoke of a place that had never been recorded on any known map, a city hidden within the folds of time and space itself. She could almost feel its presence, as though it were waiting for her to find it. The air around her seemed to shift, charged with an energy she couldn't name, as if the very world was holding its breath in anticipation of her discovery. Alara's mind raced with possibilities. What if this map led to a city that had been lost to time? What if it contained knowledge that could change everything she knew about the world? The thought filled her with both excitement and trepidation. She had always believed that maps were tools for understanding, but now she wondered if they could also be conduits for something far more profound. She turned the map over in her hands, feeling its weight as though it carried the history of an entire civilization. It was a treasure, one that promised to unlock secrets long buried beneath layers of dust and forgotten time. Yet, with this discovery came an undeniable sense of responsibility. If she followed the map's path, what would she uncover? And more importantly, what would she become in the process? The journey begins. Alara set out at dawn, her heart pounding with a mix of exhilaration and trepidation, as she stepped beyond the familiar boundaries of her village. The morning light filtered through the dense canopy of trees, casting long shadows that danced across the forest floor. As she moved through the winding paths, the air grew cooler, tinged with an unfamiliar scent, something earthy yet intoxicating, like the musk of damp moss and the distant perfume of wildflowers. She had no map to guide her, only the ancient parchment in her hand, its symbols whispering secrets that seemed to pulse beneath her fingertips. Her journey began in a place she called the Vale, a narrow valley cradled between two towering mountains that loomed like sentinels over the landscape. The valley was said to be a sanctuary of forgotten knowledge, where ancient maps and lost civilizations had been hidden away by time itself. Alara had heard tales of this place from her father, who often spoke of the wisdom contained within its walls. But now, as she navigated the winding paths, she felt an undeniable pull toward the unknown. The map's markings suggested a path that led beyond the valley, into the heart of the unknown. As she ventured deeper, the forest grew denser, its thick foliage creating a canopy that filtered the sunlight into shifting patterns on the ground. Alara's thoughts drifted to the city she had dreamed of discovering, its name whispered in hushed tones among the stories passed down through generations. She imagined it nestled within the folds of time, a place where light and shadow danced in perfect harmony, and where the very air seemed to hum with secrets waiting to be uncovered. The idea ignited a fire within her, driving her forward despite the uncertainty that gnawed at the edges of her mind. As she pressed on, the forest transformed into a more open expanse, revealing a narrow trail that led toward the mountains. The path was arduous, requiring careful navigation through uneven terrain and dense underbrush. Each step demanded focus, as if the land itself was testing her resolve. She paused often to examine the map, tracing its contours with renewed determination, feeling the weight of its mystery on her shoulders. Despite the challenges, Alara pressed on, her spirit unshakable. The map had become more than a mere artifact. It was a companion, a guide that seemed to lead her toward the very heart of the unknown. With every passing moment, she felt the pull of the city growing stronger, a tantalizing promise that beckoned her closer. The forest whispered its secrets in hushed tones, and as she ventured deeper into the embrace of nature, Alara knew that this journey would test not only her physical limits but also the depths of her courage and curiosity. The Veil of Shadows. The path wound through a landscape that seemed to shift with each step, as if the very earth beneath her feet was aware of her presence. The trees grew taller, their gnarled branches stretching toward an unbroken sky, while the air carried a strange stillness, as though the world had paused in anticipation of her arrival. Alara moved cautiously, her breath shallow and her heart pounding with the thrill of discovery. The forest pulsed with a quiet energy, a presence that seemed to hum beneath the surface of her awareness. As she ventured deeper into the veil, the light from the morning sun began to fade, replaced by an otherworldly dimness that cast long shadows across the ground. The trees stood like sentinels, their leaves whispering in the wind as though they too were watching her progress. Alara's fingers trembled slightly as she traced the map's markings, the symbols flickering in the fading light, almost as if they were responding to her presence. She could feel a strange pull within her, a magnetic force that drew her forward despite the uncertainty that gnawed at her mind. The path narrowed, and the forest grew more dense, the air thick with an unseen weight. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through the clearing, stirring the leaves into a frenzy. Alara froze, her instincts on high alert as she scanned the surroundings for any sign of danger. The trees seemed to lean inwards, their branches forming a protective barrier that seemed to close around her. She could feel the tension in the air, an unspoken warning that something was watching. Despite the unease, Alara pressed on, her resolve firm. She knew she had to continue, for the map led her toward the city, and she could not turn back now. The symbols on the parchment glowed faintly, casting a soft light that illuminated the path before her. It was as if the map itself was guiding her, its energy pulsing with an inner life that defied explanation. As she moved forward, the forest began to change, revealing glimpses of something ancient and forgotten. The trees grew taller, their trunks gnarled and twisted, forming a natural archway that led deeper into the vale. Alara could feel the weight of history pressing upon her, as though the very essence of the forest was intertwined with the past. Each step she took resonated with the echoes of time, a reminder that this place had witnessed countless journeys, each one marked by the passage of generations. The air grew cooler, and the scent of earth and damp moss filled her lungs, mingling with an almost imperceptible fragrance that seemed to carry the weight of forgotten stories. Alara took a deep breath, inhaling the familiar aroma of nature, but it was different now, charged with something intangible, something that made her heart race. She could almost hear the whispers of those who had come before, their voices mingling with the rustle of leaves and the distant calls of unseen creatures. Yet, despite this enchanting landscape, a sense of foreboding lingered in the air. The map's symbols flickered more intensely, casting shadows that seemed to dance across her face. She could not shake the feeling that something was watching, waiting for her to make a choice that would alter the course of her journey. The forest seemed to pulse with an energy she could not fully comprehend, and as she moved forward, she felt the weight of destiny pressing upon her shoulders. With each step, Alara's determination grew stronger, fueled by the promise of discovery and the knowledge that she was on the verge of something extraordinary. The veil of shadows had revealed its secrets to her, and she would not turn back now. The Twilight City. The air around Alara shimmered as she stepped beyond the forest's edge, where the familiar veil of nature gave way to an otherworldly stillness. The sky above was a single, unbroken expanse of indigo, stretched endlessly in all directions, its surface undulating like the waves of a vast ocean. It did not rise or fall, nor did it change with the sun's movement. Instead, it remained constant, eternal, as if the heavens themselves had been carved into the fabric of time. The ground beneath her feet was different, softer, more reflective, as though it held the light of the sky within its depths. A strange warmth radiated from the earth, a subtle glow that seemed to pulse in tandem with her own heartbeat. She had always believed that maps were tools for navigation, but now she understood that they could also be conduits for something far greater. The map's markings had led her here, and as she stood at this threshold of revelation, she realized that the city was not merely a place, it was an anomaly, a fragment of the world that had been hidden from the eyes of most. She could feel its presence in the air, a weight that settled upon her shoulders like an unseen force. The city stretched before her, its silhouette half-veiled by the twilight sky. It stood against the horizon as though it had emerged from the folds of time itself. The buildings were unlike any she had ever seen, structures of immense height, their surfaces shimmering with a faint luminescence that pulsed in rhythm with the distant hum of something unseen. Towers twisted upward like frozen columns of light, their facades adorned with intricate patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. At first glance, they appeared to be nothing more than towering spires, but as she stepped closer, she realized that they were not merely structures, they were living things, each one a testament to the city's ancient origins. The streets of the city pulsed with an energy that defied explanation. The air was thick with an invisible force, a quiet hum that resonated in her bones. She could feel the weight of history pressing upon her, as if the very essence of the city had been built by hands long forgotten. The buildings were constructed from materials that seemed to defy natural law, stone that glowed faintly, metal that shimmered with an iridescent sheen, and a substance that pulsed with a life of its own. It was as though the city itself was alive, breathing in tandem with the land around it. Alara moved forward cautiously, her steps deliberate, each one accompanied by a deep breath as if she were stepping into the very heart of something sacred. The path before her was lined with ancient ruins, their structures worn but still standing, their surfaces etched with symbols that seemed to shift in the dim light. She traced her fingers along one such mark, feeling an almost tangible pulse beneath her touch. It was as if the city remembered her presence, and she could almost hear its voice whispering secrets she had yet to understand. As she continued deeper into the city, the landscape began to change. The towering spires gave way to a series of winding streets that twisted through the heart of the city, their paths leading her toward an open plaza at the center. At first, the plaza was empty, its surface covered in a fine layer of dust and light that shimmered like molten silver. Yet as she stepped closer, she noticed that it was not merely dusty, something more vibrant, more alive, seemed to emanate from the ground itself. The air around her crackled with an unseen energy, and for a moment, she felt as though she were standing at the edge of something vast and unknowable. In the distance, she saw figures moving through the streets, their silhouettes outlined against the indigo sky. They did not seem to be human in the traditional sense. Each figure was composed of light and shadow, their forms shifting and morphing as if they were part of the very fabric of the city itself. The people moved with a grace that defied explanation, their expressions unreadable yet filled with an unspoken understanding that transcended language. They watched her with eyes that seemed to hold the weight of countless stories, each one a fragment of something vast and ancient. Ilara's breath caught in her throat as she realized the truth of what lay before her. This was no mere city, it was a realm where time did not flow as it did elsewhere, where the boundaries between reality and dreams were blurred. The city had been hidden from the world for centuries, a place where the past and present coexisted in an eternal dance. And now she stood at its threshold, the map's markings guiding her to this moment of revelation. She could feel the weight of history pressing upon her, but also the promise of discovery. The city was a living testament to the forgotten, a place where knowledge had been preserved and waiting for someone to uncover it. As she stood in awe before its ancient splendor, she knew that she had come too far to turn back now. The city's memory. As Ilara stepped further into the heart of the city, the air around her thickened with an almost tangible presence, a quiet hum that resonated through the very bones of the place. She could feel it in her skin, a pulse that was not hers alone, but something older, deeper, something that had been waiting for someone to come and listen. The people who moved through the streets were no longer just figures of light and shadow. They were echoes of those who had walked this path before her, their voices woven into the fabric of the city's soul. She paused at a great archway, its surface adorned with intricate carvings that seemed to shift in the dim light. The symbols depicted scenes from an ancient past, glimpses of battles fought against time itself, moments of creation and destruction, and glimpses of lives lived in ways that defied understanding. Ilara traced her fingers along one such carving, feeling a strange warmth spread through her fingertips as if the city were speaking to her. The carvings pulsed with an inner light, their patterns shifting subtly as if responding to her presence. A voice echoed from somewhere beyond the archway, not spoken but felt, a whisper of memory that wrapped around her like a warm embrace. She turned toward it, her heart pounding in rhythm with the city's own heartbeat. The figures who had walked this path before her were no longer merely shadows, they were real, and their presence was undeniable. They stood at the edge of the plaza, their forms shifting between light and shadow as if caught between two states of being. One of them stepped forward, their form a blend of solidity and translucence, their eyes reflecting the indigo sky above. "You have come to see what has been hidden," they said, their voice a soft murmur that seemed to echo within her chest. The city is not just a place, it is memory itself. It holds the stories of those who came before, and it will hold the stories of those who come after. Ilara nodded, her mind racing with the implications of what she was hearing. The city was not merely a physical entity, it was an archive of knowledge, a repository of wisdom that had been preserved through countless ages. It was a place where time did not move in linear fashion but instead flowed in cycles, where past and present coexisted in an eternal dance. The figures around her shifted subtly, their forms becoming more defined as they spoke. "You carry the map," one of them said, their voice carrying a weight that felt both ancient and familiar. "It is not just a guide, it is a key to something greater. The city has been waiting for someone like you, someone who will uncover its secrets and bring it back into the light." Ilara's heart swelled with a mix of awe and determination. She had come seeking knowledge, but she realized that her journey was far from over. This city was more than a place to visit, it was a living entity, a repository of history and wisdom that had been waiting for someone to awaken its dormant power. The weight of the map in her hands was no longer just a symbol of her quest, it was a conduit through which she could bridge the gap between the past and the future. As she stood before the figures, she felt the city's presence pressing against her, urging her forward. She knew that her path had only just begun, and the stories waiting to be told were as vast as the sky above. The hidden path. Ilara's fingers traced the intricate carvings on the archway, each line a silent whisper of forgotten knowledge. The city pulsed with life around her, but it was not merely the physical presence that stirred within her, it was the weight of history, the echoes of countless lives intertwined in an unbroken chain. She could feel the pulse of the city resonating through her bones, as though it were alive and aware of her presence. A soft breeze swept through the plaza, carrying with it the scent of something ancient and untouched. The air shimmered with a faint glow, as if the very fabric of the world had been woven in a way that defied time itself. Ilara stepped closer, her breath catching in her throat as she noticed the subtle shifts in the surrounding landscape. The streets around her were no longer mere pathways, they were veins of energy, pulsing with an inner light that seemed to guide her forward. She followed the path, each step leading her deeper into the city's heart. The architecture grew more elaborate, the structures rising higher than she had ever imagined, their facades adorned with symbols that flickered in the dim light. It was as if the city itself was constructing its own identity, shaping its form in response to the presence of those who walked through it. As she moved, a deep resonance filled her ears, a low hum that seemed to emanate from the very ground beneath her feet. It was not an unnatural sound, it was something more profound, a vibration that resonated with the core of her being. She could feel it in her chest, a pulse that matched the rhythm of the city's heartbeat. The hum grew stronger, and she realized that it was not just the city responding to her presence, it was the city responding to her very essence, as if it were testing her resolve, as if it were seeking to determine whether she was worthy of its secrets. The path twisted and turned through a series of hidden alcoves, each one revealing glimpses of forgotten history. In one, she saw images of figures standing in solemn procession, their faces etched with the weight of time. In another, she caught sight of ancient scripts that had been inscribed into stone, their meaning obscured by centuries of erosion. Each revelation sent a shiver through her, a reminder that this city held more than just its physical structure. It was a repository of knowledge, a vault of memories waiting to be uncovered. As the hum intensified, Ilara felt an overwhelming sense of purpose settle within her. She had come seeking answers, but now she understood that the journey ahead would not be one of mere discovery. It would be one of revelation, of uncovering truths that had been buried for generations. The city was not just a place to visit, it was a living testament to the passage of time, and she was here to witness its story unfold. With each step forward, she felt the weight of history pressing upon her, but also the promise of revelation. The path ahead was clear, and she knew that she would follow it no matter what. The Forgotten Chronicle. Ilara's fingers trembled as they traced the ancient script etched into the stone walls of one of the hidden alcoves she had passed through. The symbols were unlike anything she had ever seen, flowing, organic lines that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles, their meaning obscured by time and neglect. She could feel the weight of history pressing against her, as if the very stones themselves were holding back the stories they contained. A soft glow emanated from within the alcove, illuminating the intricate carvings with a faint luminescence that pulsed in rhythm with the city's heartbeat. The air around her felt heavier now, thick with an almost tangible presence that seemed to whisper secrets she could not yet grasp. She moved closer, her heart racing as she deciphered the symbols, each one revealing fragments of a forgotten tale. The script spoke of a time when the city was born from the very fabric of the world itself, its origins shrouded in mystery and reverence. It told of a great convergence of forces, light and shadow, creation and destruction, that had birthed the city as an eternal anomaly. The people who first inhabited it lived in harmony with this duality, their existence woven into the rhythms of the city's pulse. They were not mere inhabitants but part of something greater, bound to the very essence of the place they called home. As she read further, Ilara felt a surge of understanding wash over her. The city was not simply a place, it was an entity, a living being that had existed in balance with its surroundings for centuries. It absorbed the energy of the world around it, shaping itself in response to the needs of those who dwelled within its walls. Yet, as she continued, she sensed an undercurrent of tension, a whisper of something that had been buried beneath the surface. The script spoke of a great calamity that had befuddled the city's balance, an event so profound that it threatened to unravel the very essence of the place. It described a time when the boundary between light and shadow grew too thin, leading to a period of perpetual twilight that swallowed the city in darkness. The people who once lived here were forced into hiding, their existence fragmented by the unnatural nightfall that had taken over their world. Ilara's breath caught as she realized the implications of this revelation. The city was not merely a place of memory and knowledge, it was a living entity, one that had endured through countless cycles of darkness and light, each cycle shaping its identity in ways she could not yet comprehend. The calamity described was not just an event but a turning point, a moment when the city's existence as it knew it had been threatened. The script ended with a final message, a plea for those who would come after her to seek understanding and renewal. It spoke of the need to restore balance, to awaken the city from its slumber and bring it back into the light. Ilara felt an undeniable pull toward this revelation, as if the city itself was calling out to her, urging her to take up the task that lay before her. As she turned away from the alcove, the weight of the knowledge she had just uncovered settled heavily upon her chest. The city was more than a place, it was a living testament to the struggles and triumphs of those who had come before, and now it was beckoning her forward with an invitation to uncover its secrets and restore its balance. The path ahead was clear, but the journey would be one of immense responsibility. The city's reckoning. Ilara stood at the edge of a vast chamber where the air shimmered with an ethereal glow. This was the heart of the city's memory, a place where time itself seemed to slow, and the very fabric of reality bent under the weight of history. She could feel the pulse of the city beneath her feet, a steady rhythm that echoed in her bones. The walls around her were lined with ancient carvings, each one a fragment of forgotten knowledge, their meanings obscured by centuries of neglect. A soft hum filled the chamber as if the city itself was breathing, its energy resonating through the stone. Alara's fingers brushed against the nearest carving, and for a moment, she felt the weight of countless lives pressed upon her. The symbols shifted subtly, responding to her presence, revealing glimpses of stories long buried. She traced the patterns with her fingertips, each line a whisper of history that stirred something deep within her. She had come seeking knowledge, but now she understood that this was not merely a repository of forgotten wisdom, it was a living entity, a manifestation of the city's struggle to exist in balance between light and shadow. The script spoke of a great calamity that had threatened to unravel its very essence, an event so profound that it had led to a period of perpetual twilight. It was a warning, a reminder that the city could not remain in its current state forever. Alara's heart pounded as she realized the implications of what lay before her. The city was no longer merely a place of memory and knowledge, it was a living testament to the cycles of time, a place where balance had been tested and challenged. It was a place that had endured through countless ages, but now it stood at a precipice, teetering on the edge of collapse. She could feel the weight of history pressing upon her, an overwhelming sense of responsibility that settled in her chest like a stone. The city's existence depended on its ability to remain in balance, and she knew that if it faltered, it would be swallowed by darkness once more. She had come seeking answers, but now she understood that the journey ahead was not just about uncovering the past, it was about restoring the city's equilibrium. With a deep breath, Alara stepped forward, her resolve hardening as she faced the enormity of what lay before her. The chamber pulsed with energy, and she could feel the city calling out to her, urging her to take up the task that had been entrusted to her. This was not merely an academic pursuit, it was a responsibility that would shape the future of the city itself. The final choice. Alara stood at the heart of the chamber, the weight of history pressing upon her like an unrelenting tide. The city pulsed with energy, its very essence woven into the fabric of the space around her. She could feel the balance between light and shadow, a fragile equilibrium that had endured for centuries. Yet, as she gazed upon the ancient carvings, she understood that this balance was precarious. The city had survived through countless cycles of darkness and illumination, but it was now at a crossroads, teetering on the edge of oblivion. She had come seeking knowledge, but now she realized that the true purpose of her journey was far greater than mere discovery. This city was not merely a place to study, it was a living entity, one that required care and preservation. The script spoke of a great calamity, an event so profound that it had led to a period of perpetual twilight. It was a warning, a reminder that the city could not remain in its current state forever. Alara's mind raced with possibilities. If she could restore balance to the city, if she could awaken its dormant power and bring it back into the light, then perhaps this place would be saved. But the cost of such an act was unknown. The city had endured through countless cycles of darkness and illumination, but now it stood at a precipice, and any attempt to intervene might unravel the very essence of what made it unique. She closed her eyes, allowing herself to listen to the whispers of history, the echoes of those who had come before. She could feel the city's pulse resonating within her, urging her forward with an undeniable force. This was not just a matter of restoring balance, it was about preserving the legacy of the past, ensuring that the stories of those who had lived and died in this place would not be lost to time. Alara took a deep breath, her resolve hardening as she made her decision. She could not simply restore the city's power without understanding its true nature. The script spoke of a great calamity, but it also hinted at an ancient knowledge that had been hidden away, waiting for someone to uncover it. This was not just about saving the city, it was about unlocking the wisdom of the past and learning from it. With determination etched into her face, she turned toward the chamber's center, where the final act of restoration would take place. The city's balance depended on her choices, and she would not let it fall into darkness once more. The reckoning begins. Alara stepped forward, her heart pounding in rhythm with the pulse of the city. The chamber was alive with energy, its walls shimmering with an ethereal glow that seemed to ripple through the air like a heartbeat. She could feel the weight of history pressing against her, as if the very essence of the city was urging her to act. This was not merely a moment of discovery, it was a reckoning, a test of her will and understanding. She reached for the ancient artifact at her side, its surface smooth yet strangely warm, humming with latent power. It was an object of immense significance, a key that had been passed down through generations, bound to the very soul of the city. As she held it in her hands, the symbols on its surface flickered, responding to her presence. The air around her grew thick with tension, and for a fleeting moment, she felt the weight of countless lives pressing upon her, those who had lived within the city, those who had perished in its depths, and those who would come after her. The chamber's glow intensified, casting long shadows that danced across the walls. Elara could see the intricate carvings shifting, revealing fragments of forgotten knowledge that pulsed with a life of their own. Each symbol told a story, each line a whisper of something greater than herself. She closed her eyes, letting the weight of history settle into her bones, and she knew that this was the moment when the city would demand its truths from her. She inhaled deeply, feeling the energy of the city surge through her. The balance between light and shadow had been disrupted, and now it was time to restore it. With a deep breath, she reached out and touched the artifact, its surface heating up as if responding to her will. A blinding light erupted from the object, engulfing the chamber in a cascade of golden brilliance. The city's energy surged through her, and for an instant, she felt herself become part of it, part of the living entity that had endured for centuries. The walls shimmered with color, the carvings shifting into vivid images that filled her vision. She saw the faces of those who had lived in this place, their stories etched into the very fabric of the city. She saw the light and shadow that had shaped its existence, the cycles of renewal and decay that had defined its history. Elara's fingers trembled as she reached out, guiding the energy through the artifact, feeling it flow like a river through her veins. The chamber responded, the walls pulsing with renewed life as if the city itself was breathing again. The light faded, replaced by a deep, steady hum that resonated within her chest. She could feel the balance shifting, the city's essence stabilizing in a way she had never seen before. But there was still more to do. The script spoke of an ancient knowledge hidden away, waiting for someone to uncover it. This was not merely about restoring the city's power, it was about learning from its past and ensuring that the lessons of history would not be forgotten. As she stood at the heart of the chamber, she knew that this was only the beginning. The weight of legacy. Elara stood in the heart of the chamber, the golden light still flickering through the air as if the city itself were breathing. She had restored the balance, but she also understood the enormity of what she had done. This was not just about saving a place that had been swallowed by darkness. This was about preserving the legacy of those who had lived within it. The city's history was woven into every thread of its existence, and now, with her touch, she had become part of that tapestry. She thought back to the script, the words that spoke of a great calamity and an ancient knowledge hidden away. It was not merely a matter of restoring power, it was about understanding the wisdom of the past, learning from the mistakes of those who had come before. The city had endured through cycles of darkness and light, but now, with her presence, she felt the weight of history pressing upon her shoulders. This was not just an act of restoration, it was a responsibility to ensure that the lessons of the past would be carried forward. She could feel the energy of the city stirring, as if it were responding to her actions, drawing strength from her will. The balance had been restored, but she knew there would always be another cycle, another challenge. This was not an end, but a new beginning. She had uncovered the truth, and now it was up to her to carry its lessons forward. Elara turned toward the chamber's entrance, feeling the weight of history pressing upon her. The city had endured for centuries, but it would not remain unchanged. She knew that the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, that there would always be another darkness to confront and another light to guide them. But she also understood that this was the moment when the legacy of the past would be carried forward, ensuring that the stories of those who had lived within the city would not be lost to time. The path forward. Elara stepped away from the chamber, the golden light fading as if it had been a part of her own essence. She felt the weight of history settle upon her shoulders, an unrelenting reminder of the lessons she had learned and the responsibilities she now bore. This was not merely an act of restoration, it was a call to continue the legacy of those who had come before, to carry forward the wisdom that had shaped the city's existence. She closed her eyes for a moment, allowing herself to breathe in the stillness of the chamber. The city pulsed with energy, its essence stirring as if it were waiting for her to move forward. She could feel the echoes of the past whispering to her, urging her to continue. This was not an end. This was a beginning, and she would be the one who carried the legacy of the city into the future. She knew that there would always be another cycle, a new darkness, a new challenge. But she also understood that with each cycle came the opportunity for renewal. The city had endured through countless cycles, and now it stood at the threshold of a new era. She could not control the tides of time, but she could ensure that the lessons of history would not be forgotten. Elara opened her eyes, her resolve hardening as she turned toward the path ahead. There were still mysteries to uncover, stories to tell, and challenges to face. The city was alive with potential, and she had only just begun to understand its depths. She could feel the energy of the city stirring within her, a call that would lead her forward into the unknown. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of history settle in her chest, but also the promise of new beginnings. The path ahead was uncertain, but she knew that with determination and courage she could shape the future of the city. This was not just about saving it from darkness, it was about ensuring that its legacy would endure for generations to come. The legacy of light. Alara stood at the edge of a vast expanse where the sky shimmered like liquid silver beneath an endless twilight. The city had been saved, but she knew that its true power lay not in the preservation of its physical form, but in the knowledge it carried, knowledge that would shape the future of those who came after her. This was no longer just a tale of discovery, it was a legacy of light in shadow, of balance and transformation. She had uncovered the truth of the city's past, the echoes of its struggles, and the wisdom that had been hidden away in the depths of time. The script spoke of an ancient knowledge, one that would guide those who would follow her. It was not merely about restoring the city's power, it was about learning from the mistakes of the past and ensuring that the lessons of history would never be forgotten. She knew that this knowledge could change the course of the world, that its wisdom could shape the fate of countless lives. Alara felt the weight of her responsibility settle upon her shoulders, but she also understood that this was not an end. The city had endured through cycles of darkness and light, and now it stood at a crossroads, waiting for those who would carry its legacy forward. She knew that there were still mysteries to uncover, challenges to face, and paths yet to be walked. But she also knew that the city's story was not complete. It had been saved, but it was only the beginning. She turned toward the horizon, where the twilight stretched endlessly, a reminder of the balance that must always be maintained. The city would continue its journey, shaped by those who came after her, and she would carry its legacy with her as she stepped into the unknown. The unwritten future. Alara stood at the edge of the eternal twilight, gazing out over the horizon where light and shadow danced in perpetual harmony. The city had been saved, but it was not merely a place of memory, it was a living entity, one that would continue to evolve with each cycle of time. She could feel the energy of the city stirring within her, a pulse that resonated through her very being. This was not an ending, but a new beginning, one where the lessons of the past would guide the future. She closed her eyes, allowing herself to breathe in the stillness of the moment. The weight of history pressed upon her, but she knew that this was not a burden she had to carry alone. She had uncovered the truth, and now it was up to those who would follow to continue the legacy of the city. There were stories yet to be told, mysteries yet to be solved, and challenges that lay ahead. But she also understood that the city's essence would never fade, it would endure as long as there were those willing to listen, to learn, and to carry forward its wisdom. Alara opened her eyes, the twilight stretching endlessly before her. The path ahead was uncertain, but she knew that it was not without purpose. She had come seeking knowledge, but she had also found a responsibility, a duty to ensure that the city's legacy would be carried forward. This was not merely an act of preservation, it was an act of creation, of shaping the future in ways that would honor the past and illuminate the path for those who would come after her. She took a deep breath, feeling the energy of the city pulse through her. With determination etched into her soul, she turned toward the horizon, knowing that the story of the city was only just beginning.